I don't want to cut off the fun spiel I do up front. But hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of On the Contrary, the show that takes a look at the popular plays each week, sits them down, and asks, what exactly is it that you do here? I'm Chris Spags, joined once again by the top DFS player in the world, the founder of Awesemo.com, Alex Awesemo Baker. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here talking week 14. Definitely shaping up to be a really great week as far as like a game theory perspective of interesting decisions. Hopefully we can give all of our listeners the contrary ones that are going to pan out. So I'm excited.
And also, we're joined by a man who really one of the smartest minds in football analysis online that you can find. One of the senior editors at Roto World, whose matchups column is really a must-read, one of very few must-reads in the industry, Evan Silva. How you doing, Evan?
Good. Yeah, we got some big late-breaking news that we will be able to address. There's no other shows going on right now able to address this situation with as much urgency as we will. So I'm excited to looking forward to jumping right into that.
And speaking of urgency, nothing says urgent like a couple quick plugs. Today we are sponsored by Fantasy Draft, and we appreciate them very much. Fantasy Draft has lower contest fees than all the other major players out there in the DFS space. They pay out a minimum of 25% of players. It's a great way to build your bankroll if you are a new player. A lot less sharks like Mr. Awesemo over there on that site as well. It's a good way to kind of get your feet wet, build a bankroll. That's all important things that you need when you're starting out in the world of daily fantasy sports. Use the promo code CONTRARY. Either go to fantasydraft.com or download the Fantasy Draft app. Use that promo code CONTRARY. You'll get a free $5 with any deposit. And again, this is how you build bankroll, taking free money from people. Alex, what are your thoughts on Fantasy Draft for the folks real fast?
I really enjoy Fantasy Draft. I played there a lot last season. This one, I've been a little busier with the site and everything. So that means there's more opportunity for those of you who are listening to go play and win that money, because otherwise my plan would be to win it myself. So I'm happy to tell you guys that you can take Fantasy Draft. I'll just take all the other sites. But one of the great things about Fantasy Draft is that since the tournaments are smaller, it really kind of reduces the amount of variance you have. When you enter even like a $4 tournament that has like 100K people on any site, the amount of swings that can happen, even if you're a good player, can be huge. Like, I'm talking like 5 figures. You're going through months at a time where you're not winning money. But when you're playing at a tournament that has like 5 to 10,000 people instead of 100,000, Fantasy Draft, that makes it a lot more sustainable if you're just kind of getting started. Gives you a better idea of your skill level faster than playing on a top heavy huge field GPP.
Everybody seems to
I have a question for Awesemo. Where are you broadcasting from, sir? You appear to be located at an artificial intelligence. Are you there with Elon Musk, and is he trying to steal your brain power?
Yeah, actually, I'm here in my robot farm. I have a whole set of computers set up to both mine Bitcoin and mine head-to-heads in small stakes, double-ups on DraftKings and FanDuel. So yeah, thanks for blowing my cover, Evan.
Bad week to mine Bitcoin. Bad week. But maybe a good week. There's opportunity. It's a contrarian move to mine Bitcoin this week, I guess. But go to fantasydraft.com now or download the Fantasy Draft app. Again, $5 free with any deposit with promo code CONTRARY. Support us, support our providers that help keep the show on the air. So please go check them out. Give them a shot. And one last plug, and this is a good one. This one, we are giving away something every single day as part of our 24 days of giveaways at Awesemo.com. Our gift from us at Awesemo to you guys. And this week, we're actually changing the prize again. They get better each week. This week, you get 1 month free to any sport of your choosing, or you get a piece of merchandise from our brand new store at shop.awesemo.com. So we're putting out some products now. We've had a lot of requests from people asking just to get a logo on something. So we have some cool shirts. Alex is wearing a mock-up that he had done early, which is not one that we'll have on sale. So it's an authentic one, which maybe he can give you the shirt off his back if you want. You want to ask for that too. But go. All you have to do is like this video, leave a comment giving us your favorite contrarian pick for the week, not in the live chat, but in the actual comments on the static video when this live stream is done. And we will enter you to win. You can win, again, 1 month to any sport of your choosing at Awesemo.com, or any piece of merchandise from shop.awesemo.com. And you can also buy things from there too. All the proceeds from this holiday season on shop.awesemo.com will go to charity, because Alex is a very generous guy. He may not seem it with his picks every week, but he is. He's very generous of spirit and soul. So go like this video, leave a comment, and you'll also be entered to win a grand prize on Christmas Eve, 1 free all-access pass, all of our sports at Awesemo.com. And that'll be given away on Christmas Eve. So a lot of stuff. We're really generous this season. Alex, are you feeling good about yourself? You're doing a lot of mitzvahs for people out there.
Yeah. This is the season, and I'm disappointed that Chicago isn't on the slate, because I'd be really going for that Tariq Cohen Hanukkah game.
Noted Jewish athlete, him and Sandy Koufax, 2 of the great Jews of all time playing sports. But yeah, go check out that link right now if you want to check out the merch anyway. But enter to win it. You can win it for free. Won't take much for you. All right, let's talk about the breaking news that Evan hinted at up front. Odell Beckham Jr. out this week. That is a big late breaking item, going to change a lot of things in that Giants-Redskins games. Evan, what do you think about this one? Who's going to open opportunity for?
I think it's a clear indication, first of all, that the Giants are trying to tank, which is, it also makes you wonder, hey, if Eli struggles early in the game, are we going to see Kyle Lauletta, who they activated, their 4th-round pick out of Richmond, who they activated to the 46-man game day roster. He had been inactive, the first 11 games, and then last week, all of a sudden, he popped up as their game day backup last week. So it definitely makes you wonder if we're going to see him as soon as on Sunday. Which is ironic, because that's why Ben McAdoo really got driven out of New York last year, was because he benched Eli. Like, he knew that Eli was kind of washed before anyone else wanted to admit it. And now, it's clear that this team they need to kind of start over. But the 3-receiver set without, first of all, he just frees up a ton of volume in the passing attack. And the 3-receiver set with Odell Beckham inactive is going to be headlined by Sterling Shepard, and I think that we will either see we'll see Benny Fowler and Corey Coleman as the number 2 and 3. I don't know about taking a shot on one of those guys, but I think that Sterling Shepard jumps into a position where he could get a lot of volume. I would like to like Evan Ingram, but they cut his snaps before he got hurt, and now he's back. And Pat Shermer, their head coach, was saying that he's going to still split time with Rhett Ellison, who's really a blocking tight end, but they've used him as a pass catcher recently. So I think that at the end of the day, the guy to really look at is Sterling Shepard. You could go back and look at his production without Odell over the last couple of seasons, and his target expectation is much higher. And Saquon Barkley is another guy who could benefit. Although, if they really want to tank, like, wouldn't they start playing Wayne Gallman? I don't know. I don't know. It's weird, because they're like half stepping their tank. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's why you keep it a little nondescript, I would guess, is that, you don't give it all away. Because if you take Saquon out, it's pretty obvious. And he's young. He's got fresh legs. Let him run. Watch him give himself up this week somehow. Alex, what do you think about the passing game situation with Beckham out?
I think it definitely improves the chances for Shepard and Barkley, and I agree with Evan that going down to Fowler or Coleman might be a little bit too much of a reach. Unfortunately, the best Giants quarterback thrower, Odell Beckham, is out. So I have a feeling there won't be any deep touchdown bombs this week. So that's why I like Barkley kind of just getting a lot of targets and receptions and racking up the PPR points.
Evan, any concerns about the injury to Shepard that he had in that game last week? I think it was a rib injury. I actually read that in your column, and I remember seeing him look gimpy, but I didn't know that he was actually hurt. Would that affect him at all this week?
Yeah, he was full practice by the end of the week. So, and he's a dude who's played through injuries before. I mean, he missed a chunk of the game last week, and then he came back, and there were plays where he got up and he was holding his ribs afterward. And then he had an opportunity at a late touchdown, and he kind of couldn't extend for it. So I don't know. it's a little difficult. But at the end of the day, like, we want to bet on dudes who we project to get a lot of targets. Mm-hmm. And it looks like Sterling Shepard could get like 11 targets in this game. I mean, like, that's realistic against the Redskins, who Golden Tate, another slot receiver, just had finally his breakout game in Philadelphia against them last Monday night.
While we're talking about this game, we might as well talk about the very cheap, proud USC alum quarterback on the other side, Mark Sanchez. He didn't look terrible, didn't look good in that start coming in for Colt McCoy after he broke his fibula. What do we think about Sanchez this week, Alex? A very good deal on him.
I think you already know the answer to that, in addition to everyone listening. I mean, Alex Smith, great quarterback for being contrarian, but Mark Sanchez is digging a little bit too deep.
That's fair. Evan, any thoughts on Mark Sanchez? Any positive thoughts on Mark Sanchez?
No.
It was worth a shot. Josh Doxson, a lot of air yards though. I'll say that. I've been playing him in showdown games whenever the opportunity strikes. I don't mind Josh Doxson, but probably not going to be helped out by old Mark Sanchez. Good to see him in the league though. Good to see him getting work. Let's talk about all right. So on our ownership projects at awesemo.com, we have project 2 sub $4,000 running backs as the highest owned plays. We have Jalen Samuels for the Steelers and Jeff Wilson for the Niners. We've seen these lower priced chalk guys have some up and down struggles, some success, some massive failures at high ownership. Evan, talk to me a little bit about the football prospects of both Samuels and Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, with Wilson, we've already seen him have a 20-touch game. So that instills some level of comfort. I mean, he had 21 touches last week. They got blown out by Seattle, but he was still in there catching passes. I think he had 8 catches for over 70 yards. That, of course, is great on DraftKings. With Jalen Samuels, I think that he doesn't have the same kind of carry upside that Jeffrey Wilson has. So where I think that we could see Jeffrey Wilson get like 16 and 19 carries. Jalen Samuels really isn't like a ball carrier. He was a wide receiver, tight end, slot receiver at North Carolina State. And so far this season for the Steelers, he has either run a pass route or pass blocked on 73% of his snaps. So he's like I remember watching him coming out of college, and I thought he reminded me more of Trey Burton than like a running back. But they also have, I mean, he's played running back, to be clear. Like, he's playing running back for the Steelers. It's just they use him as a pass catcher and a pass blocker. For me, like, I think the best projection for him is like 9 to 12 carries and 4 to 7 targets against the Raiders. So, and at minimum price, like, I mean, I think he's pretty much like a lock and load,
Alex, what do you think about Samuels?
I definitely defer to Evan on the kind of football perspective there. I think there is a lot of potential. I'm kind of thinking back to when James Conner at the beginning of the season, like, they didn't really specify what the rules would be. This week they announced it's kind of like a timeshare between Samuels and Ridley. So I'm really skeptical of what if that's actually going to be true, because their whole MO is just running one running back whole game. I mean, obviously these guys aren't as high caliber, but I think there's a ton of upside, that maybe the situation will be a lot different than people are expecting. And one guy will get a lot of the work and be on the field a lot more. And if that happens, then if you're holding the right guy, that could be huge.
And what about Wilson, since we didn't touch on him on your side, Alex?
Yeah, I think he's in a great spot too. These guys both are projecting pretty well for me. I wouldn't say they're my favorite plays of the week, especially given the initial ownership that they're going to be some of the higher owned guys. But I think that their cash game staples and also good GPP plays for
sure. Evan, if you had to pick one of these guys to play, or if I guess to tell the people out there which one you would feel more comfortable with, which would you pick out of Samuels and Wilson?
Like, just straight up?
Just straight up.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go with the player that I believe to have the higher touch floor and ceiling in Jeffrey Wilson. Like, if I was just, if I had a start-sit decision in a season-long league, I'd probably go Jeffrey Wilson. I mostly play on FanDuel, so there's a significant price gap. It's Jeffrey Wilson costs $1,000 more on FanDuel, so I'm leaning toward Jalen Samuels there. But as to, I thought that Osmo made a really good point about, maybe it could be the backfield distribution could be slanted toward Jalen Samuels a lot more than the rhetoric that we're getting. Because the main source of that, the idea that it's going to be an even split between Jalen Samuels and Stephen Ridley, is actually Jalen Samuels himself. It was a quote from him. And Jalen Samuels is like a day 3 rookie, and Stephen Ridley has been in the NFL for 8 years. So, should we really try? He may be deferring to the veteran, maybe it'll be Jalen Samuels in there the entire game, which would be very, very interesting. Because I don't think they would be, running the ball very much in the game. They already lead the NFL in pass attempts per game. Ben runs the show in Pittsburgh. He's like the offensive coordinator. He's the quarterback. And so they are passing the ball at a prolific rate. And I think that this, having this, kind of versatile all-purpose back in there, as opposed to a guy that they could grind it out with in James Conner or Le'Veon Bell for 25, 30 carries a game, it kind of changes the way that they play offense. I think it's similar to early in the season when there was no Mark Ingram in New Orleans. And, their primary back was a more receiving-oriented back. Obviously, Alvin Kamara is a much more dynamic, physical talent than Jalen Samuels, but they were throwing the ball a lot more. And as we've seen Mark Ingram come back now, they've been running the ball a lot more. So it kind of changes, it changes your offensive personnel, and it changes the complexion of your offense. And man, if we could get 40, 45 pass attempts from Ben Roethlisberger against the freaking Raiders, dropping back in squeaky clean pockets, it's like onslaught city, against the Raiders, I think.
Yeah, I was going to segue over to the Pittsburgh game because I too love Ben this week. And he's actually going to be my contrarian QB pick. So spoiler alert, pretend you're surprised later. However, just real fast on Jeff Wilson. I actually watched some Jeff Wilson tape before this because I thought it was important because I liked what I saw from him versus the Niners, but I want to see in college. His screen game is really good. And with the Niners, they really focused on getting him the ball on screens. And Evan, this is a question for you. Wouldn't that benefit him quite a bit versus the Broncos, who are going to come in, try to rush the pass or try to get at Mullins? I feel like that should create enough space for Wilson to get carve out 10-yard runs at a pop.
Yeah. And he's been really efficient in the passing game so far this year. 10 targets, 9 catches. He had 54 catches over his final 2 seasons at North Texas. That's a lot for a college running back. So absolutely, that's one of the reasons that he's in the league, is because he can catch passes. And yeah, it does make a lot of sense for them to use him in the screen game.
There we go. So a little bit of interest in Jeff Wilson, and we'll keep talking about Jalen Samuels as we go, I'm sure, because he's going to come up quite a bit. But let's talk about this Pittsburgh-Oakland game since we're going there. How about the rest of the guys? Ben looks good. I think this is also a really bad passing offense, giving up more passing touchdowns than pretty much anybody in terms of on a rate level. And Ben is projected for under 10% ownership. And then I guess on the Oakland side, we have Jared Cook, the only guy projected for any ownership of note. And he's still at 5% ownership. So I guess how do we feel about stacking this game, Alex, knowing that we're going to get some scoring, at least on the Pittsburgh side?
Yeah, I definitely think that you can put together a nice team stack here, especially with the Jalen Samuels being so cheap. I like the receivers a little bit more on FanDuel than I do on DraftKings based on the pricing. Juju Smith-Schuster at 7,500 on FanDuel seems especially appealing, and then we have him at 8,200 on DraftKings. I think usually players are more expensive on FanDuel, so that's kind of a stark contrast in price. So I think that I'd be a lot more likely to lean towards a Big Ben stack on FanDuel than I would on DraftKings.
Evan, any interest in this game besides Samuels?
Yeah, Ben, AB, Juju, Vance. I think Vance is a guy that's going to go overlooked. The Raiders have allowed the most fantasy points per game in the NFL to tight ends. Vance has been kind of up and down. You know, he's definitely like the third or fourth wheel in the passing game, so he's not going to be consistent. But we know that he has like big playability, and you know he's been running like way more pass routes than Jesse James and getting a lot more targets. So, but yeah, and then on the other side, yeah, Jared Cook kind of stands out a little bit. I mean, Marcel Aitman is an air yards guy, you know, not a production guy. You know, Jordy is mildly interesting. So Seth Roberts he suffered a concussion in practice this week, and this is like his third concussion within the last 12 months. So if he doesn't play, and then you just look at like who has run the second most slot routes on the Raiders, because Seth Roberts has run the most slot routes, it's Jordy Nelson, and then there's like a big gap, you know. So, and then you can look back at like the Steelers give up a ton of production in the slot. I mean, we saw that last Sunday night because they actually have a good slot corner in Mike Hilton, but they try to cover these dudes with linebackers, you know. So, and Jordy's coming off a good game, and looks like he's back healthy. I think he had like 9 catches last week. So he's like mildly interesting. I don't know I'm sure he has like almost zero ownership. What's his price on DK? I actually haven't even looked at him.
He's 4,200 on DK and projected for 1.2% ownership right now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, you know, what's Jared Cook? You said 5% ownership?
Yeah, actually closer to 4% and 5,200 salary.
All right. So, I mean, I think those are the guys that you're looking at if you're going to try to, you know, bring it back in a game stack.
Yeah, I would agree there. And I just real fast, so these are two pretty good tight end matchups on both sides, according to Football Outsiders DVOA. 58% boost on the Pittsburgh side to their tight ends, and a 27.5% boost in DVOA on the Oakland side. So could be an interesting spot for both Jared Cook and Vance McDonald with their roles there. Let's go to a game with the highest team total on the slate. We have New Orleans and Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin and Jameis Winston are two of the chalkiest plays of their positions. Over 20% projected ownership for Alvin Kamara on the other side. Alex, how are you attacking this game? It should be some scoring, but Tampa Bay's defense has looked a little better, and New Orleans has kind of regressed a bit. How are you feeling about these guys?
So Godwin, I know we were hyping him up last week on the show. He ended up kind of meeting and exceeding expectations last week, I think. And right now his price seems pretty decent at 4,900. It's a little bit cheaper than Deshaun Jackson had been, and he's pretty much filling that role plus some because he's getting a higher percentage of the snaps. So I think Godwin is pretty appealing. Definitely a good cash game play and GPP play. I'm looking at Tampa Bay more on DraftKings than New Orleans, just based on the pricing. But on FanDuel, I think the New Orleans stack is more in play, with Thomas being more playable with the price, and Kamara is pretty decently priced on both sides. So I definitely like his potential this week.
Evan, how do you see this one breaking down with New Orleans and Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, like everyone's a good play. I mean, you know, so let me look. I want to look at the total because the total was like plummeting for there for a while. 57.5 open, 40, 54.5. All right, so it's come up a little bit. It got down to like 54 in some spots, so it's now back up to 55 and 54.5. I mean, if you read like weather reports on the game, like they're not that bad. They're really not that bad. I mean, there was some concern early in the week about like thunderstorms but I mean, the chances of rain, and I checked it on Thursday and then I checked it this morning again, and like the chances of rain have like gone down. And then if you look at like, you know, just relative like to the time of the day, like it's the chances of rain lessen throughout the day, and the wind isn't a big deal. It's like as long as it's under 15 miles per hour, like we're fine, you know? So I guess it's not surprising that the total is starting to come back up now a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think that everyone is an awesome play here. I mean, Adam Humphries, I think, is one of my favorite plays. He's been great with Winston.
He's got a good matchup in the slot against the Saints. I do not think that the Peyton Barber is going to be a run at all against the Saints. The Saints have like the best run defense in the NFL, and Peyton Barber, just ain't that good. So that elevates the passing expectation for Tampa Bay even further. They were already going to throw the ball a lot, and now they're even more incentivized to throw the ball a lot in this, projected shootout game. It's still, I think, the highest total game on the slate, even though it has dropped down a little bit. On the other side, Michael Thomas ripped up the Buccaneers like easily in week 1. He's been down for the last couple of weeks. So, my guess is that recency bias will lead him to have very, very little ownership, or at least much less than he should. And then, Alvin Kamara is just an incredible play against this Buccaneers team that, has struggled at linebacker and can't defend the run anymore. Early in the season, they were good against the run, not the case anymore.
Yeah, I'm with you on Adam Humphries. He was my guy last week. Unfortunately, I didn't get him enough with Godwin. I just kind of thought it was an either or thing, but both those guys went off. But nobody mentioned Mike Evans. I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on him. He's projected for under 8% ownership. Obviously, Godwin projected to be very highly owned, as I mentioned above. Adam Humphries' ownership going up too. Alex, is this maybe a week to consider going back to Mike Evans and assuming that it kind of becomes a traditional target share like it's been, I guess, more often than not for the Bucs?
Yeah, I think that he's in play on both sides. I have him in my initial crunches about what our ownership projections have him at. Again, a little bit better play on FanDuel than DraftKings. He's cheaper on FanDuel. But I definitely think you should have him in most of your Winston stacks. But also as a one-off play, I think he's decent, but I wouldn't go out of my way to fit him in. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. Evan, anything you're noticing with your namesake, Mike Evans? Anything wrong with him?
Be better.
Just what? Evan. It worked. You and Tyreek Evans, your cousin.
Yeah. He's always got big game potential. The game sets up well for him, from a total standpoint. I think that Marshawn Lattimore is going to be on him, and Marshawn Lattimore's really freaking good. But, hey, the last time we saw him play, like Mike Evans owned Marshawn Lattimore. Then you go back to last year, and like Marshawn Lattimore owned Mike Evans. So I don't know what to do with that. It's just kind of push it out of the way. It's not really a part of your analysis anymore. I think he's a great tournament play, no question.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting to note that his ownership is coming down so much, and it does seem like at some point the pendulum has to swing back the other way. Might not be this week, but I think Mike Evans he's gonna have a week one of these weeks. He's just been too quiet.
By the way, people just freak out. People just freak out about weather. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's not quite baseball here. It's not that bad unless it's super windy.
Yeah, it's again, and I try to reiterate this as often as I can. Really, all you care about is wind. Okay, wind, even a couple of weeks ago, it was the Tampa Bay Carolina game. Where's that last week? I don't know. Everything's blurring together for me at this point. But
that was last week.
Yeah, so people were freaking out about the weather, and it didn't affect anything. So. Again, unless it's high winds or it's just a natural event, don't worry about the weather. It's not a big deal. Do not make your decisions based on the weather. Let other people do that. It actually may be a way to get an advantage.
I'm just waiting for the big snow games where LaShawn McCoy gets 35 rushes or something crazy like that. That's another weather spot that matters because teams are really hesitant to pass when there's a ton of snow. Unfortunately, I think the weather has been pretty warm, relatively, even in the classic snow stadiums so far. And I think we'll get one of those weeks coming up soon, though.
There actually is one weather. Sorry, Spags. I keep cutting. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There is one weather situation that worries or is a little bit concerning for this week, but it's not on the main slate. It's Chicago with Jared Goff. Jared Goff played at Cal. He grew up in California. He plays for the Los Angeles Rams, and he's going to be playing, off the lake, where it's going to be cold, and he's played very few games just in his football playing career in cold weather. And we saw him play a game again at Denver earlier this year where the weather was like in the high 20s, I believe. And he had his worst game of the season. Rams just squeaked that win out 23-20. And he took 5 sacks. He threw a pick, threw for 201 yards. So but that's not even on the main slate. But I just wanted to mention that.
Well, Evan, it is on the main slate on Fantasy Draft. So if you want to get these Bears and Rams in your lineup, you can go on Fantasy Draft. I'm especially fond of my boy Mitch Trubisky. He's won several people $1 million so far this year. I've not been one of them, but I'm ready to bear down.
Also, that week that with the Broncos was the Todd Gurley explosion week. I feel like at like 10% ownership. So maybe something to keep in mind if you are playing Fantasy Draft or playing that showdown slate. Could be a Gurley extravaganza in a tough defensive spot. Let's move on to Atlanta at Green Bay. We have the deposed dictator, Mike McCarthy, out of town. The people are rejoicing. They pulled down a statue of him and celebrated, I'm sure, outside of Lambeau. We have Rodgers and Devontae Adams ownership up this week. Aaron Jones is down after busting last week, mostly because he just got 50% of the snaps, something which I know Evan was thrilled with as a parting gift for Mike McCarthy. Mm-hmm. What are we doing here, Alex, with the pass game or the run game? Which would you favor?
So on DraftKings, no one is really standing out. I think Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, and Devontae Adams are all decent plays, but I'm probably not going to be favoring them. I don't think they're going to be particularly contrarian. They're not really jumping out as great values to me. On FanDuel, though, Aaron Jones is a little bit cheaper, and I think there's a strong possibility he gets a large majority of the carries this week. He's been getting more work in the passing game than I expected initially. So I think that combo puts him as a top running back for sure. Just his price on FanDuel is a little bit more palatable.
That seems fair to me. Evan, what do you think about this game? And also, I guess, what do you think about Joe Philbin taking over as the head coach? Last time, this actually gave me some hope for the Packers before the year started. The last time that he was the coordinator for the Packers, they led the team in passing offense. But it seemed like maybe Mike McCarthy's stronghold on things was too high for him to maybe reach his potential as a coordinator. But what do you think about the I guess he looked pretty hapless on Hard Knocks, but Joe Philbin, mostly competent or not?
Just a guy who's kind of there, I don't know. Like maybe he's good at like giving back pats and clapping. Like he ain't gonna do much, butt pats. Go on, get out there, Aaron. I don't know. He admitted like he hasn't called plays, since Northeastern back in like the 1960s, and he ain't gonna do anything. Like Aaron's gonna be like, Joe, go sit down over there. Go sit down over there. Like. We're not doing that play call. We're going to do what I want to do. Mike's not here anymore. You just stand there and look old. I mean, and Joe knows his role too. I mean, that's why he's been able to keep all these jobs, over the years. I mean, he's been in the NFL like forever. Yeah, but in Miami, they ran one of the pass heaviest teams or one of the pass heaviest offenses in the NFL. You're spot on about that, and I think that. I mean, I just think that Aaron Rodgers is going to run the show here. It's not going to be like Joe Philbin isn't going to be like bringing in his approach and his scheme. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers doing whatever he wants. I was hoping that Osimo would hit us up with a contrarian Jamal Williams take.
Alex, no thoughts on Jamal this week?
I guess I'm not as contrarian as you expected. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it makes sense for them to go back to Aaron Jones and, go back to feeding him the rock. The Falcons are terrible against the run. We know how they love to give up catches, in the passing game to running backs, and then just lots and lots of Devontae Adams because that's Aaron Rodgers' boy.
So one thing which I think is worth noting too, Rodgers was publicly petitioning for Aaron Jones to get more touches. So if we do think it's a bit of a power play for him to be calling the offense, I think it might be more beneficial to Aaron Jones than people realize because Rodgers seems to want the run game to be more successful and to take some pressure off of him. I think that's an interesting thing to note with this game where I like Rodgers and Adams stacked, but I also think Aaron Jones might be a good play because this Falcons D is just so bad. Let's see. What about on the Falcons side? We had a tough week last week for Julio. Matt Ryan's kind of been not looking that great. Evan, what are you seeing on the Falcons offense and what is the cause for concern there?
Yeah, I mean, they have been held to 19 points or fewer in 4 straight. And their pass protection issues are especially exacerbated on the road. Like their pass protection will just fall apart in road games for whatever reason. And they're giving up twice as many sacks per game on the road as they are at home. And the Packers are 3rd in the NFL in sacks. So I think the Packers defense is a little bit interesting here, especially if you could get them cheap. And then but, at the same time, like, I think, Julio can make big plays. Calvin Ridley can make big plays. Austin Hooper has been really solid. They have dudes that can make big plays in the passing game. We have a pretty good total that's been getting hit up. It opened at 48, moved up to 51, even 51.5 in some spots. Like, that's a good move for a total. And so, I mean, I think that the game does have some shootout potential. But I definitely side with the Green Bay side, like by a considerable distance. You have a dome team going to Lambeau. The weather reports, if you want to put stock in those, then the weather reports have this as, I believe, the coldest game on the slate, and we do have a dome team going to play, in the game that has the lowest temperatures. So that's another thing to consider. But I like if you want to try to game stack this, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. Rodgers, Devontae, and then bring it back with Julio or bring it back with Ridley, who has shown that he has, explosion potential already this season.
Yeah, I agree there. And also Julio last week, I read this in your column, which I noticed it during the game, but I think you crystallized it pretty well. Julio was really a victim more of the coverage scheme by the Ravens more than anything, right? Evan?
Yes. And Ridley had a touchdown call back toward the end of the game that, hey, if he scores that touchdown, then we may look at his performance. We're definitely looking at his performance in a different light. And then Austin Hooper, comes back and scores a touchdown, just a few plays later. So now we're looking at Austin Hooper as if he had a really good game. You know what I'm saying? Like just these one-off events really influence the way that we view the single game performances. It's just a very, very small sample sport. Julio Jones entered last week's game with 100+ yards in 6 straight games. Okay. So, I mean, we're not too worried about Julio Jones. I think we go right back to him against Green Bay.
Let's move on to another game. We got Cincinnati at the Chargers. It's the highest team total of the week for LA. We, of course, Jeff Driskel on the other side, I'm sure a compelling play for some people. Perhaps not the running quarterback to have wanted last week with Josh Allen available, but he tried his best. I think it's more AJ Green's fault for having gimpy feet than it was Jeff Driscoll's. But anyway, he's going into LA this week. What do we make of the Austin Eckler, Justin Jackson backfield situation, Alex? Eckler not projected for much ownership, even though he's been a popular play when Gordon's been out before.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking Eckler is going to be a strong play this week. I think that everyone was watching that primetime game when Eckler was kind of struggling and Justin Jackson was balling out. I mean, to me, it's kind of more a randomness than anything else where, I mean, any game, any guy could struggle. It doesn't really predict the future for the next week. What I'm expecting this week is that Eckler is going to be getting the first chances, and if he's rolling, they're going to give him more usage. If he's not doing as well, Justin Jackson will pick up the slack. But the potential is huge here for Eckler. He had 8 targets last week, 11 in the previous week. That is like enormous potential for any player. And he also is getting like a majority of the carries. Played like almost 3/4 of the snaps last week. So I feel like my expectations here are a little bit higher than the public's. I did see a report that the coach was saying that Eckler is like tired or something, and like I think that's something that they'll determine during the game. Whereas if he's playing well, they're gonna feed him the rock. If he's not, that might cause him to have a rougher game. So it's a little bit of a high variance spot, but I think potential's there, and because of the number of targets he gets, stacking him with Rivers and Keenan Allen seems like a pretty nice play too.
Yeah, and the Cincinnati Bengals too, really bad at defending pass catching running backs too, according to DVOA. And I think that's interesting too, because again, as Alex mentioned, a ton of targets for Eckler last week, which may go under the radar because people just see Justin Jackson coming in and running like he's OJ Simpson. What do you think about this one, Evan?
Yeah, but Austin Eckler, Tuttle brought him up, on the Swolecast, thinking that he is a real good tournament play, and I agree. The issue is that his price went way up, so that's something that you got to deal with. But he looked terrible in the game, and I was pissed during the game, because I had a lot of exposure to him in DFS and season long. I had all these high expectations for him. He's a good player, that's not in doubt, but he sucked in that game. He was awful against the Steelers. Just could not get anything going. It was like the Steelers were ready for everything in that game. But the Steelers have a much better defense than the Bengals, number one. The Bengals have the worst defense, literally the worst. They've given up the most points per game and the most yards per game in the NFL. And they are on the road to San Diego, whereas that game was, at Pittsburgh. So it's a very different, atmosphere. It's a much better matchup. We know that Austin Eckler was over 70% of the snaps last week. He really dominated touches. It was 16-9 or 18-9 or something over Josh Jackson or Justin Jackson. And, so I think that Austin Eckler does make a ton of sense. He is a big play dude. And, all it takes is a couple of big plays. And, the coaches will go right back to thinking, no, we're going to keep playing Austin Eckler. We're not worried that he's tired. With Justin Jackson, my thing is that he is the stone minimum price on FanDuel. And he did play well. And he also, I think that two dudes could have a good game in the same backfield in the same game. Again, worst defense in the NFL. You're catching them, as 14-point home favorites. I think that it's actually gone up. It opened at 14 or 14.5. Shoot, it's up to 16 at 5 dimes. So sharp money is coming in on the Chargers here. I think that two running backs in the same backfield can have a big game against Cincinnati.
Yeah, I would agree there. Alex, would you run it back with any Bengals on that side? We have Tyler Boyd at 3% ownership, Joe Mixon at 2%. I think Boyd might be a little appealing if we think the game script goes towards a blowout.
Yeah, I think Boyd is the guy I'm looking at. With AJ Green out, he's going to be the number one receiver, even though you have your boy, Jeff Driskel, throwing, and he hasn't had a breakout game yet. I think that Tyler Boyd is going to have the volume necessary to put up a game. I think if Boyd is excelling, that'll give the Chargers more incentive to play hard and try to score points instead of run out the clock. So the correlation there.
I thought Driskel looked better in the second half once he got comfortable. I think once Green went out, he looked really shaken. He was getting pressured a ton anyway and having a tough time with it. But he got comfortably through that touchdown to Cody Core, who I think is also a little interesting. I don't think Driskel's super playable this week, but I think he could create enough opportunity, similar to how Josh Rosen did sort of all my shitty quarterback X's that we talk about on the show. But it can create enough value for these guys. And I think he's not that bad of a player where you're worried about him somehow oppressing Tyler Boyd. I think Boyd's a good play. CJ Uzomah, too, also pretty highly targeted by old Jeff Driskel, if that is a spot you want to go to. Let's see. Alex, any under-the-radar spots you're thinking of this week?
Let me pull my crunches here. I think that David Johnson versus Detroit, not under the radar, but that's one guy that's big on my radar. and other people's, I guess. I think I saw his double-digit ownership. But I think I saw the Cardinals are like 40% chance to win this game. That's a lot better than they have been in the past few weeks. So I think their offense has a pretty decent shot here versus the Detroit team that has kind of struggled this year, especially on the defensive end.
Evan, any interest in this side, or maybe even a game stack for you? A little Lions Cardinals action, Evan?
No, Spags. But I do like David Johnson though. I do. I mean, his price has come down to a really great spot. He's still getting 20 plus touches a game, like every game. And I know that it felt bad and it looked bad. Like for the people that watch like Red Zone channel, Chase Edmonds running in these touchdowns. It's like, what the hell is going on? But David Johnson still out-touched him, 21-7 and, played 80% of the snaps, so and like, the coaches are aware of that too. Like, they may like go out of their way this week to if they get down into scoring position to make sure that David Johnson gets touchdowns this week, because I'm sure that David Johnson like heard all week, like, why are you getting vultured by Chase Edmonds in fantasy football? You're killing me. And so David Johnson like goes to the coach. He's like, guys, like, like you might want to, give me the ball like when we get in scoring position this week. Like all these things actually do happen. That's why like, teams coming off like the big primetime wins, they have a tendency to like, the next week, perform below expectation because they get big heads and, they read their own press clippings. I mean, it's all narrative, but like these things actually can influence what happens on the field. That's why you see, hey, a dude, starts complaining about, his role and, he becomes a squeaky wheel and like that hits, like that's been hitting since Keenan Allen complained about his role in London. Like he's crushing every single game. And so, those are actual things that happen with David Johnson. Again, his price is so great right now. Money has come in on the Lions, though. That I don't love that, and I wish that they were using him more in the passing game. Like that has been a disappointment under our boy Leftwich, just not using him in the passing game as much as I expected.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a surprise. I think they're just such a slog right now with how Rosen's playing and just how they've struggled on offense, where it might be better just to play it close to the vest and get through the year. And maybe if Leftwich stays as offensive coordinator, which who knows. I think maybe we'll see more creative things next year. That would be my hope, but who knows? Let's go to another popular running back who people want to talk about, Christian McCaffrey, in a matchup with the Browns. A little bit of an injury problem for Cam Newton, where he might have the same shoulder problems that sidelined Andrew Luck for a while. So there are some concerns maybe about putting him on the sideline if this game doesn't go their way. Alex, how do you think about McCaffrey this week, and how do you see this matchup between Carolina and Cleveland breaking down?
So I think McCaffrey is he's projected to do really well by everyone, I'm sure, just because he gets so much volume in the running and passing game. His price has gone up significantly. On DraftKings, he's 9,400. On FanDuel, he is 9,100. On Fantasy Draft, he's actually the best value of all three sites at 17.2, which is equivalent to about 8,600 on the other sites. The main thing is that I just don't think that he's the best guy to spend up on this week. I prefer Barkley. I know our ownership projections don't take into account the fact that Odell Beckham was ruled out. But I think that's a significant bump to Barkley, who's kind of a comparable price. And I think that will kind of tip the scales a little bit for me, given that McCaffrey is supposed to be pretty popular this week again.
Yeah, I would agree there. Evan, how do you feel about McCaffrey this week going into a matchup with Cleveland, who's got some good defensive guys, but still giving up a ton of yardage on the air?
Yeah, so here's like a rankings that we did on the Swolecast. We should do it here. And so Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, or Ezekiel Elliott, just raw points. I liked Barkley number one even before the Odell thing. But how would you rank them in just, guys that you want, in order of guys that you want to play? Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Zeke Elliott.
Should we throw Kamara in there too? Because somebody wanted to know more about Kamara.
Yes.
Alex, what do you think?
Barkley is definitely number one. and then screw the rest of the guys. No, I'm just kidding. Kamara, Elliott, McCaffrey. Well, I'm taking into account price here. This is what's jumping out at my crunches.
I think I might put Elliott at number 1 just because I kind of like how this matchup goes for him, but I'm also getting a little too irrational with the Cowboys. I think he's at a pretty good price on DraftKings as well, so that helps. But Alex's rankings, I think, seem pretty sound. How would you rank him, Evan?
Yeah, I'll go Saquon 1, McCaffrey 2, Zeke 3, Alvin Kamara 4. I hate that. Kamara's going to outscore them all.
It's an interesting week because you have all these guys in pretty good spots. Then you have the 2 cheap guys that we talked about with Samuels and Wilson, who are also, I would say, in pretty good spots, at least from an opportunity standpoint. It's going to be interesting construction. Alex, which way are you leaning in terms of your lineup construction with the running backs? Are you favoring paying up? Are you doing a mix of both?
Well, I really like the value guys this week. Eckler, one of my favorites. And Jeff Wilson, Jalen Samuels, those are going to be in the mix. So I think that it's going to be an easy week to kind of go stars and scrubs, get Saquon and Jeff Wilson and Eckler in the same lineup or something like that. That's probably like the optimal way from a projection standpoint to build your lineups. Of course, if you kind of take a different approach with the amount of salary you're spending at each position, that can give you some contrarian advantage over the field. So that could be an interesting option to either spend up. It would probably be to just spend up on running back and fade all the cheap guys. I think that is a decent shot of paying off.
Interesting. Before we jump off this Carolina game too, I think we should talk about a guy who Alex had as contrarian receiver a couple weeks ago, who people are really down on, but I think this is kind of a perfect matchup for him. Jarvis Landry looks really good to me, under 3% ownership projected by us on DraftKings. Carolina's been bad versus the slot. They're changing some things defensively, so that could affect it a little bit, but the targets have been there, the snaps are there. Everybody's been burned by Landry. Are you going back to contrarian Landry this week at all, Alex?
I'm not, to be honest. He's priced at 5,800 on DraftKings. I guess see, he had a big week last week. That's why, because I was on him, he was 5,300. Now he's 5,800. So that kind of price bump is moving him out of the picture for me a little bit.
Evan, would you play any Jarvis Landry with Baker Mayfield in a terrible game last week? Still almost threw for 400 yards.
Yeah. Alex was on him for sure last week. I remember him mentioning him, and I was like, ugh. But then he wound up having a good game. He did get a lot of his catches like kind of in garbage time. But hey, what we care about is the box score. You know? Yeah, I mean the Panthers have been getting shredded by slot receivers all year long. Adam Humphries twice crushed them. Mm-hmm. You know, the list goes on and on. Tyler Boyd had a monster game against them. So, I mean, the matchup is good. It's just the usage since they changed offensive coordinators has been a little bit shaky. We did see it pop back up last week. I think he had 9 targets. So I think he's all right. You know, I'm not super excited about him. Kind of in the same boat as David Njoku. It's been kind of inconsistent. The matchup is great for David Njoku. Panthers have been getting crushed by tight ends. You know, last week he actually ran like his most routes in many weeks, but he had 3 catches for 8 yards. You know, and then the results have been very up and down over like the last month or so.
Yeah, that all seems fair. I like Jarvis Landry a little more than you guys, but I'll accept Alex as a team Landry guy when nobody else was. Kind of worries me a little bit you're not on him this week, but that's life in the fast lane. We should talk about one guy so we didn't talk about him last week on our show, and I kind of regret not bringing him up because I did bring him up on the Live Before Lock show with Josh, in which we debated him versus Aaron Rodgers. It turned out this player actually was a very, very much a better play than Aaron Rodgers. Josh Allen. What are we doing with Josh Allen? Still not a ton of ownership. His price coming up. His ownership also trickling up. He's running for 100 yards a game. Nobody wants to put a spy on him. I don't know what's going on. Alex, any Josh Allen interest this week?
Yeah, I'm not on the train yet. I know he's had a couple of top performances. I think good enough to win a GPP or something like that. but I just don't. I don't think the Bills are going to pass the ball enough to really put him in my radar. And also, I'm having trouble finding a guy on the Bills that I really want to roster at the skill positions. So I'm not going there this week.
Evan, any thoughts on this Bills resurgence? They're cutting all the receivers, focusing in on Zay Jones and Robert Foster, and again, just Josh Allen, the best running back in Buffalo since again another OJ Simpson reference. Big OJ week.
Yeah. Also hasn't been playing Josh Allen. You know, no wonder he hasn't been winning the Millies. You know? I like him, man. I mean, I really like him. You know, I don't think he's going to throw for a lot of yards and, you know, complete a lot of passes necessarily, but he does have big playability with his arm. He's got an absolute cannon, and he's been running like a madman. And I see no reason to believe that would change. You know, he especially against the Jets. The Jets are a team that play a lot of man coverage, and man coverage defenses can be more vulnerable to running quarterbacks because the defenders, when they're in man, you know, they turn their backs and they go cover guys downfield. You know, they're not playing zone and, you know, trying to, you know, worry about their quarter of the field or whatever. So that can benefit Josh Allen. I mean, he's had 6 games this year where he played start to finish, and in 3 of them he was a top 5 quarterback on the week. In the other 3, he was like bottom 5. So, and that's very aligns very much with his actual on-field play, because he's just such a boom bust player. But I think the Jets on Friday, Darren Lee, their inside linebacker, who's played all but like 17 snaps over the course of the year, and he runs 4.47, and he like makes all their tackles in their defense. He was announced as suspended, and he's done for the season. So, you know, he's the guy that would tangle with, like, you know, Josh Allen and or Shady McCoy. I don't know. I mean, I think that Josh Allen is interesting. I think that LaShawn McCoy is interesting in this game. The Jets defense is bad. You know, they can't stop the run. They just lost one of their critical pieces, you know, so I think that the Bills win this game pretty handily, and I think their defense is interesting as well.
Yeah, I would agree there. Sam Darnold apparently coming back to start, though I guess they've been trying to muddy that up a little bit. But he should be very, very fertile for some picks for the Bills. Josh Allen, I think I like a lot because he plays like me in flag football, so I might be a little biased there. But like he's just taking whatever he can get. I respect that. He's not an accurate thrower right now, but he chucks it and he runs, and a little bit intriguing. I think that defensive reason that you mentioned, Evan, I think might give me a little more Josh Allen than I'm comfortable with this week. So let's put a pin in Josh Allen, and we'll go back there.
We're getting a request. I gotta get my contrary take in here, Chris.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think that the Jets defense is one of the top ones of the week. They're like bargain bin priced, especially on fantasy draft. They're like 4K, which is like the minimum on DraftKings. They're like $2,400, just $400 more than the minimum. I mean, here's the reasoning: is whenever you're facing a quarterback like Josh Allen, he's liable to throw a lot of interception. Mm-hmm. The Bills aren't projected to score a lot of points. The team total, the game total is only like 38 or something. They're favored by 4, so their team total is like 21. And I mean, the Bills' offense isn't projected to do well. The Jets' offense is projected to do even worse. But all that taken together means the Jets' defense is a really great bargain.
That seems fair.
So I think you're saying Josh Allen and then bring it back with Jets defense?
Yeah. Well, if they get the defensive touchdowns, then Josh Allen will just get the ball right back, and he'll be able to throw more bombs to Zay Jones.
Yes.
Okay. Michael Wilmoth in the YouTube chat. Allen has the accuracy of an unmanned fire hose. That's fair, but you know what? A lot of power in an unmanned fire hose. Big cannon on an unmanned fire hose. That's all you need. Before we move on to the fade of the week and the contrarian picks, one last request from the YouTube chat, our guy Hunter M. asking Alex your thoughts on Houston and Indy. It's a game that some people have been touting a little bit. I don't know that I'm as big on it, but it is a little under-owned. How do you feel about this one, Alex?
I think there's some guys here that have some potential. The one guy who's really jumping out to me is T.Y. Hilton. I think the Colts have a couple of injuries at their receiving core. So I think Hilton, he's been getting a ton of volume, and he's in no threat of seeing that decrease this week. His price right now is $6,300. Houston's defense is pretty good, but I just think that the amount of volume that Hilton's going to get, because the Colts are going to be throwing the ball a ton, makes him a pretty nice play, either as part of a stack or a one-off.
Are you paying up for Ebron this week after he was so chalky last week and got a ton of targets?
I'm not huge on Ebron. The main drawback to Ebron that I see is that I was kind of expecting with Doyle out, they'd roll him out for 90% of the snaps or something like that, but he's only been around 75% in a lot of the games where Doyle has been out. So I'm just concerned he's not getting as big a bump as people expected him to.
And are you running it back with any Texans on that side?
I think the Texans are harder to nail down this week. On FanDuel, they're really not jumping out at me. On Fantasy Draft, they're not. But on DraftKings, I think that Hopkins and Kuti are both in play. Kuti is questionable, I think, but if he plays, I think he'll be pretty good. They're not core plays by any means, but I think they could be good contrarian ones.
Evan, any thoughts on this game real fast?
Yeah, I love Ebron. I mean, I know the snaps were, they were right around 78%, I believe. But, I mean, he got 16 targets. And, I mean, he has just hogged targets in all the games where Jack Doyle has been out. So, and the Texans have been terrible against tight ends. Like, Jeff Hoyerman had, like, a monster game against them. Jordan Reed had his best game against them. So I really like and then the week before it was Jonnu Smith and Anthony Ferkser had like over 100 yards combined and a touchdown against them. So I like Ebron a lot. What's his ownership projection? And can you tell me on DK and FanDuel?
Yeah, I'll pull up FanDuel right now. DK, he is at 12.4% ownership at 5,700, so down quite a bit on where he was last week. And our site is loading.
Yeah, that's interesting that his ownership projection would actually be down from last week. I would guess that it was due to a price change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's up quite a bit price wise. And on FanDuel, he's 6,400 and ownership projected for 17.5%.
Okay, so that's fairly high.
Yeah, it's a little higher than DK for sure.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think he's an awesome play. And I agree completely with T.Y. Hilton. He's like listed as a game time decision, but I mean, pretty much all indications point to him playing. He only missed one snap with the injury last week. He practiced on Friday. And he's just got way too much speed for the Texans perimeter cornerbacks who are old dudes and can't run. So, and Dontrell Inman is out and Jack Doyle is out, and like the target distribution for the Colts has just become a lot more narrow. You know, where there was one point where they had like a ton of different dudes. Mo Alley Cox was, catching touchdowns and stuff. And now, and he's out. And now we're really just looking at Ebron and T.Y. Hilton and maybe some Nyheim Hines. And that makes T.Y. Hilton and Eric Ebron a lot more comfortable plays because of the narrowing of the target distribution.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense there. Let's go into our fade of the week. Who are we fading this week? It's an interesting week for a fade because a lot of these guys I don't hate. But Alex, who would you fade if you had to?
I agree with you. A lot of these top home plays are looking pretty good to me. The one that's not is Christian McCaffrey, or Run CMC, as you like to call him.
I created that. Nobody else ever said it.
You just have to be the first person that people hear using it, and then they'll.
I hope so. We're gonna sell a shirt with Run CMC on it.
Yeah. The main thing is just the price has gone up to a point where it matches the potential, and I don't think he's a better value than his price. In comparison, some guys like Barkley around the same price range is a similar ownership, but I have projected to be better value. So that's probably the direction I'm going to be going this week.
Evan, who would you fade if you had to?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I don't know. Give me some guys that are high owned, I guess, so I have a starting point.
I'll see. We got Jeff Wilson high owned. We got Chris Godwin high owned. Jalen Samuels high owned. This is true of both sites actually. Christian McCaffrey, Keenan Allen, Alvin Kamara, Cortland Sutton. It's probably my pick.
I'm going to go with Keenan Allen, and I mean, not high confidence at all here. But I'm going to go with him because his struggles this season, which occurred mostly in the first half of the season, occurred in games where the Chargers were playing really bad teams. And the problem was that the Chargers just were not throwing the ball. And at that time they were also trying to, more incorporate Mike Williams and, all this other stuff. But and they've since realized, I think that, just feed the rock to Keenan Allen, stop messing around, But this goes back to a lot of those teams that they were playing in the first half of the season. And against this terrible Cincinnati team that doesn't have A.J. Green, that has the worst defense in the NFL. And I think it's going to be a game where they can, again, like we talked about earlier, two running backs in the same game can have a big game. And, Keenan Allen, he can be – I think he'll be solid, but maybe not, in line with what we've seen recently where he's just been tearing the cover off every single game since their bye week.
Yeah, that seems fair. I'm going to go Cortland Sutton just because there's never been a bad time to fade chalk Cortland Sutton. I get there's more opportunity there, but I think you could see Deshaun Hamilton or even a little more involved Phillip Lindsay or, Tim Patrick is going to probably get some more run as well. Or even Matt Lacoste, old Matt Lacoste, who was on the field a ton last week, just blocked a lot. Wouldn't be surprising to me to see him get out and run some routes this week. So I think there are ways to go where it might not break Cortland Sutton's way. And at 22% projected ownership for old Cortland, I'm all right looking elsewhere, I think. Contrarian QB pick for the week, Alex. Let's go.
So I was having trouble coming up with this one because there's a lot of QBs projected kind of a similar range. So I just picked my favorite one of that bunch, Phillip Rivers at 6.1% on DraftKings. We have him at 7.7% on FanDuel. The potential of the Chargers passing game is huge here. The only question mark is if they'll have to pass a lot. And I think that makes a good GPP play because you have that correlation where if Cincinnati does well with the Boyd and maybe Mixon or some other guys, then you can get a above average game from the Chargers too. So I think that's a nice contrarian play.
Evan, who would be your contrarian QB for the week?
I'm going to go with Dak Prescott. You get to play him indoors against Philadelphia. I think Amari Cooper can get open at will against this injury-ruined Philadelphia secondary. Love the fact that the Cowboys have really embraced using Ezekiel Elliott in the passing game. Since their bye week, he has run the fourth most routes of any running back in the NFL, and his targets are way, way up. Those are the Cowboys' numbers 1 and 2 receivers, and also the Eagles have allowed the 6th most receptions to running backs in the NFL this season, and they're going to be without their middle linebacker Jordan Hicks. And then I looked at just the quarterbacks that have had the most success against the Eagles. A lot of mobile quarterbacks. Cam Newton was the quarterback 3 on the week against the Eagles. Marcus Mariota was the quarterback 6 on the week against the Eagles. Dak Prescott, when they played earlier in the season, he was the quarterback 9. Blake Bortles was a top 12 quarterback against the Eagles earlier this season. So, not a high total, but Dak can have good games because of his rushing. He's rushed for a touchdown in 5 of his last 7. And I think that he can have passing success too. He's also getting back Tyron Smith, left tackle, who missed the last 2 games due to stinger injuries.
Interesting. I think that could open up Michael Gallup a little bit too, because he's been a good deep ball threat. He's getting a ton of air yards. He hasn't had that breakout game yet. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll go Ben Roethlisberger. I think a lot of people are going to play Jalen Samuels, not thinking of him as a traditional running back, not thinking of him as a pass catching one, or one who could just get little flips from the H-back spot. So I think Ben can find a million ways to hit value versus the Raiders, and he's under 10% ownership. So I'm going to old Ben in this spot. Contrarian running back pick, Alex. Who would you go with?
So I think there's some really interesting plays. The ownership is concentrated a lot. I'll be a little bit of a homer and go with my Detroit Lions backfield. This time I'm not going with Blount. I'm going with Riddick. I think last week was an encouraging sign. He got 8 rushing attempts, which really kind of was surprising. It was a lot more than he had gotten in any game earlier in the season. Previously, his highest was 4 attempts. So I think that with Kerryon Johnson projected to be out again, Riddick's upside in PPR games is huge because he's the only pass catching back, and they're giving him more work in the running game. So I think that in a game that mostly is going to be overlooked, I think that versus the Cardinals, Riddick could be the one that kind of has the blow-up game.
Evan, who would be your contrarian running back?
It's hard, man. They never said it would be easy.
We never promised this would be easy. It's like war each week with our own brains.
Shoot. I mean, Sean McCoy.
Okay.
All in on the Bills, man. The Jets have been terrible against the run recently. You know, Josh Allen has been taking all the damn rushing yards and all the damn rushing production recently. Last time these teams played, LaShawn McCoy went off 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was at the Jets. This game is back at Buffalo. I don't think that the Jets can hang here in this game, and I think that the Bills should be able to control it. Although LaShawn McCoy has not been scoring fantasy points, he has been getting touches, between 18 and 26 touches in each of his last 3. So why not? Let's run out the old fogey in the good matchup as a home favorite.
I'll go with their gadget running back, Josh Allen. No, I'll go with the contrarian running back pick, a guy we talked about a lot, Austin Eckler. Just not getting enough ownership for me. I got he's priced up on DraftKings, but he's getting so many targets. He's going to help you in a million different ways, I think. I don't like his size, but I think versus Cincinnati, it doesn't matter quite as much. So Austin Eckler, you're up. You're my dude this week. Contrarian wide receiver, Alex, to close us out.
This is a really tough one. I'm having a lot of trouble finding one. This one that I came up with is a little bit more speculative than I'd like. But Kiki Kuti, he might not even play. So check back an hour and a half before the game starts. But
that's a fresh contrarian take. Hot out of the oven.
He's trending upwards in the games he's played. He's gotten a ton of targets. Like, the usage has been there. The only question is how many snaps he's going to play. And at 1% ownership, I'm willing to gamble a little bit on that and hope that he's closer to full strength than his injury tag would indicate. And if he is, I think that he has huge potential this week.
Actually, before we get to Evan's contrarian wide receiver, our boy E-Mac, who hosts some shows for us here, follow him on Twitter. He's a really good guy. Can we get a side wager between Evan and Alex over the Bills and the New York Jets defense? You guys have any sort of wagers in mind that you would do for something like that?
I don't know.
It's more of like a price play for me. I mean, the Bills defense is one of my top ones too, but they just cost 800 more, so I don't really have
not betting a naked mile on this, then, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like a price play. I mean, Alex was like, I want to play the Jets because they're real cheap. Aren't they like the cheapest? Did you say?
They're on Fantasy Draft on DraftKings. They're like in the bottom 5 or something like that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, no fear of Josh Allen. That's fair. Evan, contrarian wide receiver pick.
Can you do Alex first?
Alex just did his Kiki QT.
Oh yeah,
I'll do mine. Jarvis Landry.
The guy who
Jarvis Landry under 3% ownership. Carolina getting killed by the slot. So Team Jarvis for me.
Oh man. Look, let's just say Gallup actually is a pretty good one. And he's also in the buy low air yards model this week. But you already mentioned him, so
still counts. We barely talked about him. I just planted the seed. I gave you the gateway to enter the Michael Gallup world.
What about let's go back to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So Randall Cobb came back last week, and he just jumped right into the slot. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling was the outside receiver opposite Devontae Adams, and that's how they played the whole game. Equanimous St. Brown was way demoted, and Jake Kumarau came on for like 4 snaps or four routes run. But the 3 receiver set was very, very clear. Marquez Valdez-Scantling actually had 7 targets. But his targets have just been empty targets recently. Hey, he's been getting them. And, we talked about how Joe Philbin loves to throw the football. We talked about how Aaron Rodgers loves to throw the football. And we talked about how we think that they're going to have success throwing the football against Atlanta. So, hey, we haven't seen Valdez-Scantling do very much for like about a month, because maybe he's hitting a rookie wall or whatever. Their offense has just stunk in general. But if they pop back up, as the sharp bettors appear to believe that they will, because the line is the total is not only moving up, the line is moving toward Green Bay. Marquez Valdez-Scantling could potentially jump in there and have a good bounce back game out of nowhere.
And some good speed on him too, which could definitely break a play from anywhere. I like that pick quite a bit. So there we go. Those are our thoughts on this week's NFL slate. Make sure to like this video and comment your favorite contrarian pick in the static version, not in a live chat right now. You'll be entered to win a free month to any sport of your choosing at awesemo.com, or a piece of merchandise from our brand new store at shop.awesemo.com. Again, like this video, leave a comment telling us your favorite contrarian pick, and you'll be entered to win. And you'll also be entered to win the grand prize that we're giving away on Christmas Eve, and all access pass to every sport at awesemo.com. It's the biggest prize we're giving away, about $700 in value there. So go click that like button, leave your contrarian pick in the comments. And of course, thank you to Fantasy Draft. They are a leader in the space for a reason. They're also much more charitable to players. Top 25% guys in every tournament are getting a prize there, which is different from all the other sites out there. So go use promo code CONTRARY to get $5 free at Fantasy Draft. Go to fantasydraft.com or download their app. Any parting words, Alex, before we go watch football tomorrow?
Just thanks everyone for watching, and especially those of you who clicked like, subscribe, and the notification bell to be notified on your computer when we go live. Thanks, Evan, for another great week. Thanks, Chris, for hosting, and Josh for producing. And I think this is going to be a really interesting week with some of these cheap plays being super popular. Is it going to be another Spencer Ware kind of situation where they bust? Sorry if I gave anyone some PTSD. But that's why we play the game, is because people get really excited about these plays, and then you never know what's going to happen. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how it all turns out.
So I think what Alex is saying is go back to Spencer Ware this week. It's a perfect spot. Everything's lining up for him. No, of course, well, watch out for Spencer Ware this week out there, folks. And we appreciate every one of you, and we'll see you again soon. Good luck.